Afternoon? Yeah, it is afternoon. Everybody have a good lunch? All right, good. Good pizza? Ice cream is better? Yeah, you can't go wrong with ice cream. I teach nutrition classes here, so I keep track of what's going on in the cafeteria. So my name is Josh Ellis. I've been here about 4 years at Chadron State. I've been teaching in higher ed for about 15 years, so been doing this for a while. So if you have any questions about what we do with your students once they get here, feel free to ask as we go through this. But I wanted to start off, this of course is the main entrance in much better weather than we have today, but the reason I put this picture up there is because this is where I walk through every morning when I come to campus, right over here on the sidewalk. And every day I step on campus, I smile. I've been doing this for 4 years, and inevitably, every time I step on campus, I smile because I absolutely love what I get to do here. So, it's a lot of fun. Each of the students that I get to work with, you get to work with a steady stream of 18 to 22-year-olds that are, at a big change in their lives. So, and it's fun being a very, very small part of that big change. Some of you I may never see in a classroom. Some of them I may see 4 or 5 times in a classroom. It all depends on what their major is. So, I teach in the Applied Sciences department, so I teach a lot of health and nutrition type classes, so in a Capstone and an FYIs, so I get to see quite a variety of students. So I kind of want to give you an idea of what the students get the first day of class with me. I don't know what they get with anybody else, but first day of class, I always talk about the 4 Bs. And the reason I talk about those is because I want them to start to develop a giving environment in the classroom. Everybody's been in a classroom where it's either a giving environment or a taking environment. Can you guys distinguish the difference between that in a classroom? Okay. You can feel when the life's getting sucked out of you in the classroom? Yeah. The professor can feel that too. So we don't like that feeling. We don't like you guys to have that feeling in the classroom. So that's a taking environment. So we try and get a giving environment to where when you leave the class, at the end of the day, you feel uplifted, like you've learned something, you've interacted with people, you've gotten to know somebody at a deeper level, you know more than you did when you came in that day. And it's nice for the professor too to be able to walk out and feel like they did something important that day. They did something good. They've changed somebody a little bit maybe. So I talk a lot about that the first day, creating a giving environment. Because students are more apt to interact with each other in a giving environment. They're more apt to answer questions that I pose in a giving environment because they're not concerned that somebody's going to think their response was stupid or something like that. Just works well for everybody. And I tell them, even if they're not in my class, to try and generate that giving environment no matter what class you're in. So if you're sitting in your classroom in high school and you can feel the life being sucked out of you, it's probably being sucked out of everybody else too. So try and change that. There's little things you can do. Ask questions. Step out of your comfort zone. So the 4 Bs, first one is to be humble. So when you come to college, your ideas are going to be challenged. Just be humble. Be humble enough to know that you may be wrong. And these are also, the 4 Bs I prescribe to myself as well as part of being the instructor. So be humble enough to know that you may not have all the right answers, and be humble enough to be able to change your mind. I'm not saying be a pushover, stand up for yourself, but know when is enough. Be curious. You'll never be bored if you're curious. I can sit in an airport for hours and just gawk at people because I'm curious. So always be curious. Because if you're curious, you won't be bored, and you'll always have an opportunity to learn. Always look for opportunities to learn in every environment you're in. Be reflective. Each of you has every answer in your pocket right now with your phone. We can Google anything. And sometimes during class, if somebody asks a question that I don't really know the answer for, I'll ask somebody in class to Google that. Then we'll discuss whether or not the site they Googled it on was an accurate site, reputable site, things like that. Because we have a lot of alternative facts floating around out there, so we need to learn how to deal with those. So in order to be reflective, you have to look at the information that's given to you, and you need to know how to connect it to past information. And the last one is to be authentic. Be yourself. You're going to be doing a lot of searching in your 4 years at college, and you may be a different person than you were when you came in, but at your core, try to be as authentic as possible. You're going to be looking for role models, you're going to be looking for mentors and all that during your time here in college, and that's fine. And I always add the last one, my grandma always says, be nice. So in honor of my grandma Rose, be nice. That was the last thing she always told us when we left the house. We usually didn't listen. So the 4 B's. Any questions on the 4 B's? Any B's you would add to that? Be on time. Okay, that's another good one. Any other B's? Be responsible. You're going to have a lot of responsibility handed to you in a very short time when you go to college. I have a daughter that's a senior in college and a son that's a senior in high school. So, any other B's? Be courageous. Okay, it's a good one. It takes courage to raise your hand in class. It takes courage when an instructor asks a question to speak up. We don't like answering our own questions. We do it quite often, but I try and count to 8 to myself when I ask a question so that I don't answer all my own questions, but sometimes that doesn't work. So yeah, be courageous. We wouldn't ask if we didn't want to know. Just in case you were wondering what the campus looked like when winter leaves us alone, I thought I would put this picture up there. Green grass, leaves on the trees, students wearing shorts and flip-flops, smiling. Nobody's hunched up against the breeze. So I told you my daughter is a senior in college. She's 22, she's graduating in May. She's a film major, so we've kept her room in the basement open. So, my daughter doesn't like that joke, but we'll see. I hope she is able to find some gainful employment, because 6 months after she graduates, there's going to be a big bill rolling in. So yeah, when I said I've been teaching for about 15 years in college. The first 11 years, I basically saw students. I saw students in my classroom, I saw students on campus. But then after my daughter went to college, I started seeing things differently. I didn't just see students anymore. I saw the parents that got those students to campus, the grandparents, the friends. I saw a bleacher behind each student with all these people waving foam fingers and the foam cowboy hats, the whole deal that were cheering them on that had got them there. So it changed the way I taught my classes, changed the way I interacted with students, because I started to interact with students the way I wanted professors to interact with my daughter when she was in college. So it changed me for the better. And so when your students are sitting in my class, I don't just see the students now. I see each of you sitting behind them, the ones that have supported them along the way. So nobody gets there by themselves. I'll talk a little bit about the Essential Studies program. Is anybody here who knows about the Essential Studies program? Anybody heard that term thrown around? Okay, a few of you have. Who wants to know more about the Essential Studies program? A few. Who's just opposed to raising their hand in public? Okay, that happens. So the Essential Studies program, when you pick your major, once you get to college, your major will contain about 120 credit hours. And here at Chadron State, about 39 of those credit hours will be devoted to the Essential Studies program. So a pretty good chunk of the credit hours. So within your major classes will take up the rest of those credit hours. So I'll kind of show you what some of those sections of the Essential Studies program look like. The first one is the FYI, so first year inquiry. So your freshman year, you'll take an FYI course. There's several of them that are offered, different categories. I I teach one called Healthy Skepticism, where we basically look at all the fraudulent medical claims and bogus diets that are floating around. It's a lot of fun. So that's the first one you take within the FYI. Then under skills, and there are several student learning outcomes underneath each of these that you would have to get through. Basically, it's just a menu of classes that you get to pick ones that sound good to you. They may have absolutely nothing to do with your major. They may have a little bit to do with your major. It's kind of up to you. Modes of inquiry is another grouping. Personal and social responsibility, and then the capstone. I teach a capstone called Weight of the Nation, which we look at the weight of the nation. We look at fad diets again and things like that that have contributed to the issues we have. And the capstone's intention is basically to kind of recap everything that you've learned up to that point. So you take the capstone your junior or senior year. Because a big part of learning is being able to connect present knowledge to past knowledge. And a lot of times you don't see those connections until later on. So we spend a lot of time in a capstone, and some of the capstones are travel opportunities. There's a group that goes to Cuba. I think there's one that goes to Brazil, one that goes to England. So there's some travel opportunities also with the capstone. So, the Way of the Nation, we travel to here, but we don't go very far. So actually this year the students are putting on a Frontier Talks. So if you want to come back April 25th at 7 p.m. in this room, we're having Frontier Talks. Not TED Talks, Frontier Talks. So loosely based on TED Talks. So any questions on these areas? So basically within these sections you'll take 39 credit hours. So a lot of times students will say, why do I have to take classes that have nothing to do with my major? So why do you have to take classes that don't have nothing to do with your major? If you're a biology major, shouldn't you just take biology classes? Why do you think you should take extra classes? Pay my salary? No. What's that? Yeah, you got to integrate it into life. Life is not one set subject. As we move through life, things change. There's some other reasons you might want to diversify your knowledge. What's that? Backup? Okay. Yep, good backup plan. I started college as a biology major, and then I ended up getting injured, ended up in the athletic training room, and I liked what I saw in the athletic training room, so I decided I didn't want to frolic in the woods as a career and decided to be an athletic trainer. But I knew relatively early on, I think I was like a sophomore in college when I realized I never wanted to leave college, and so far I've managed that. So it's a good environment to be in. So yeah, basically we're trying to develop a broad knowledge base so you have lots of different skills and lots of different knowledge to draw on. So you can carry on conversations with a variety of people. You can argue with a variety of people intelligently. You can tell when somebody's trying to bamboozle you. You can intelligently look at websites that are trying to sell you something, infomercials. Those 2 a.m. infomercials that are trying to sell you an Absizer or something like that. They don't work. So when you come to college, you're going to come with your ideas, the ideas that you've built up over the last 17, 18 years, the ideas you've gotten from your family, your friends, your environment. And when you get to college, those ideas are going to come into contact with their ideas. Who are they? They, their, those, them. Who are they? What's that? Everybody else. Yeah, everybody else but you. So your instructors, your fellow classmates, everybody else that you come into contact to is going to have their own ideas. Even if you grew up in the same house with somebody, you know if you compare notes with your brother or sister over an event, there's going to be differences. I think my brother makes up stuff that happened, but our ideas of what happened to us do not coincide. So you have their ideas. What's the most important part of these two areas? Yeah, right in the middle. That's where the magic happens. That's where new knowledge is built. That's where we build our ideas. That's how we went from counting on our fingers to having a smartphone in our pocket. I'm sure it wasn't a direct path, but generally. So that's one of the things that's going to happen a lot once you get to college, is your ideas are going to be challenged. And that's where being humble comes into play. To recognize when you were wrong, when you're right, when you need to stand strong, when you need to back off a little bit. It's all part of the experience. So when I think of broad learning versus specialized learning, this is how I picture it. So when I have the students think of analogies for the Essential Studies program, some of them came up with soup, where each class you take is another ingredient you throw into the bowl of soup to make it taste better. Some use sandwiches, some use fishing boats. The more lines you got hanging out of the fishing boat, the more fish you're going to catch. This was the analogy that I like, that broad learning, the Essential Studies program, makes up all these arrows, and the specialized learning from your major courses make up this arrow. So you're a lot more apt to hit your target if you got more arrows. That's my analogy that I give the students. I'm not a very good shot with an arrow, so it would take all of those to hit my target. But the more arrows you have, the more apt you are to hit it. And even though all of your arrows hit the target, they're not all going to hit the target, sorry. And sometimes the ones that hit the target, you don't know where they came from. It might be that random class that you had to take. That's the one that ends up hitting the target. That's the one that guides the rest of your career. Because you may come here with a plan in mind, but plans change. You know, you might take an Essential Studies class that changes your mind, and you decide to switch majors. You may come into contact with an instructor that you really enjoy, so you want to take more of their classes, so you change majors. We have some students that change majors several times. So the reason for the Essential Studies program is adaptability. You know, life happens all the time. You got to be able to adapt to all the changes. And also we want you to become a lifelong learner. That's one of the other things that we talk about a lot in FYI. And the Capstone is developing lifelong learning skills. That's where that curiosity comes into play, and being reflective, connecting the dots. I think it was Steve Jobs with Apple. He said, you know, sometimes we can't see the connections moving forward. We can only see the connections when we look back. So that's kind of the rundown on the Essential Studies program versus your major program. I don't know if I answered any of the questions that you had on it or confused you more than... Any questions on the Essential Studies program now that you kind of have a little bit of background on it? Any questions in general? Or is everybody just settling into their food coma? Is that the... Any questions for me? Anybody? Just raise your hand, yell it out. You have any questions on what will happen to your student when they get into the classroom? If students have questions, parents have questions. Mm-hmm. Okay, her question was, do you have the ability to see students' grades? I believe the student has to sign, don't they have to sign a release of some sort for that to occur?
Great question. You guys are all used to having the portal.
Yeah.
You see the portal, you look at the portal every day. My friend Dina, if you guys come here next year as seniors, my friend Dina will have a whole conversation about the love-hate relationship that happens with the portal. The answer is not nearly as easy as you would as a student, a parent of students now. Does anybody know what FERPA is? Okay. You all use FERPA every day. FERPA is the Family Educational Rights Protection Act of 1974. What that says is, you, as parents, have rights to your students' records from K through 12. You can have parent-teacher conferences. You can call up the teacher and say, what's going on? I can look at the portal. I can do this, I can do that. You have rights to those records. When your student becomes a college student, those rights revert to the college student. They are no longer your rights without the student's permission. So at Chadron State College, we realize that every family has what they need to have for their student and for them to be successful. So we have ways at Chadron State College for the student to give permission, which means the student can take away permission as well. That's a family conversation. You know, I pay your bill, I get to see your grades, or I trust you, or any of those kind of things. It's a family conversation. But there is a process at Chadron State College that would allow you to have access to the different types of records that exist for your student, the different educational records that exist for your student. Can I ask a question?
So yes, sort of.
Yes, sort of. Yeah. The answer is yes, but it's a few hoops, and it involves your student.
Because my daughter gave me permission to look at hers, but basically because she doesn't navigate technology very well, and things would be due and she didn't know they were due, so I'm like, just give me your information so that I can keep track, which I probably should cut the cord now that she's a senior in college, but
Got it.
I've kept her room open, so. Someone needs to take care of me when I get old.
That's the truth. That's the truth.
As long as she doesn't make a documentary out of it.
It'd
Be a horror show. So grades, what are some other questions? I don't think I've ever had a parent contact me directly in my 15 years, so. Hashtag I'm lucky, is that what you said? Either I'm doing a real bang-up job or just bleh. Hmm?
Sorry. How many hours do you dedicate hours formally?
As far as we have to have, she asked how many hours we spend with students outside of class. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we have, each of us are mandatory that we have 5 hours a week for office hours, and then, but most of us are in our offices most of the day, so students are encouraged to, and that's a good point. No matter where you go, make sure you use your resources. If your instructors have office hours, use those hours. We have them for a reason. And when we have office hours, you know, don't apologize when you come to our office hours for bothering us. You're not bothering us. That's why we have the office hours. So, but most of the time when students do come see me during office hours, the first thing they say is, I'm sorry for bothering you. And you're not bothering us. That's why we're there. That's why we like our jobs, because we get to interact with young people. We like to hear about what your plans are after you graduate, what you're doing, what your major is, where you're from. Because we were all in your guys' shoes at one time, a long time ago. But I think I had a mullet. Yeah. Anybody have mullets anymore? No. I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah, the question was regarding academic center and tutors, and yes, there's a center in the library where there's tutors that your students can use, and there's also faculty that also do a few hours a week in the tutoring center for academic advising. So same thing there, make sure you're using those resources. And there's tutors available in pretty much every subject on campus. So students can seek out a tutor that they can meet with privately or in a group. They can meet with instructors privately or in a group as well, as far as office hours, things like that. So yes, there's lots of resources that can increase your chances of success on campus. Just make sure you seek them out and use them. So I think too many people just think they're in it on their own. You're not on your own here. There's lots of people that are here that will help you succeed. Any other questions? These are good questions. So that was basically what I wanted to know when my daughter went to college, that she was going to be taken care of. And now I'll go home and I'll cut the cord. I won't creep on her grades anymore. Maybe. I know it's difficult, especially she was my oldest, so she's 22. My son will be graduating from high school, and I don't have any idea what he's going to do, but my daughter knew what she wanted to do from the time she was like an 8th grader on, so. Mm-hmm.
There's such a thing as dropping a class, which is important for them. What do you mean dropping class?
The question was about dropping a class. You know, what is the drop period? Is it about 6?
The ad drop period is the first week of school. So you come into it, you know, typically my partner in crime, Danielle Letcher, will probably know much more information than I do, but typically when a student, like for example next year, if a student chooses to come to Chadron State College, a schedule will be built for them for their initial semester based on what they have said to us they want to be when they grow up. Most of our, correct me if I'm wrong, Danielle, most of our incoming freshman schedules have to do with the majority of the classes are, like Dr. Ellis talked about, in your essential studies, and then 1 or 2 classes that are in the major you've chosen. There's a lot of reasons for that, and one of them is because students choose different majors at different times. We do not ever want a student to lose time. So we put students typically in 15 hours, which is 5 credits. A student has to be in 12 hours to be considered full-time. One of the things is we want your students to leave eventually, just like you guys do, without having them be super seniors. So we've had a few of them, and that's okay. They're very successful out there in the world right now. But there is a ad drop period that we talk about in every email, in every postcard. It's on the walls. It's everywhere. But typically that first week of school is, and the sooner the better. So say you get into a class and you go, okay, this one's a little bit over my head, or I'm going to be a student athlete. I should really only be in 12 hours a semester, those kind of things, because that allows you to make those changes. But as a full-time student, you have to be in 12 hours at least to live in the dorm, to get your full ability for financial aid. If you're a student athlete, you have to be in at least 12. So there's lots of reasons for that. And again, it helps keep a student on track to graduate in a timely fashion.
Okay, so they can just replace it with something.
During that first week, yes. Yes, ma'am. During that first week, you can go, okay, this one's not going to work for me. I don't want to do underwater basket weaving. I really want to do advanced synchronized swimming. So I need to be in there to get that taken care of right away. Great question.
I don't teach a synchronized swimming class. I don't have the legs for it. I sink like a rock. I do the underwater camera. So yeah, that first week of class is very important to ask lots of questions in class, just to feel it out and get the syllabus, look through it, see what the workload is for that class, what the reading assignments are for that class. Visit with the instructor if you have concerns, because that first week is very important, especially if you need to find another class to get yourself in. Gives you a little bit of a time because sometimes classes will fill up. So, any other questions? No burning questions? Thanks a lot for your time. Hopefully I enlightened you somewhat on what happens in the classroom. If you have any questions, feel free. You can always email me. Seek me out on the college site. If you have any questions about majors, minors, the Essential Studies program, anything like that, feel free to contact me. If you own a film industry and are looking for an employee, I'll give you my daughter's information. So, thank you for your time. Have a good day.